Good evening and welcome to this evening's Development Management Committee meeting. I'm Joan Grime, Councillor for Culture, Glaisbury and Croft, and I will be chairing the meeting. Due to the current coronavirus pandemic, the Council have taken steps to follow restrictions and health guidance in relation to social distancing, whilst balancing the needs of carrying out our regulatory functions. This is the sixth meeting of this committee that's being held remotely. The agenda for the meeting will run as per the usual format. The meeting is being broadcast live to the public, who have had the opportunity to make written representations which have been distributed to members. Excuse me. However, there will be no input from the public during the meeting. This is in line with the Coronavirus Act of 2020, Section 78. Present at the meeting are 9 elected Borough Councillors, plus officers of Warrington Borough Council. I will now ask all those present to introduce themselves. Will councillors also confirm that they have received the agenda and reports on the applications and have a copy in front of them? An update report has also been circulated and available for members to view. So Councillor Barr, will you start the introductions?
I will do. Good evening, everyone. I'm Councillor Bob Barr. I represent Lymm North and Thelwall, and I have all the papers in front of me, and I've read the additional representations.
Thank you. Councillor Carey.
Yes, good evening, Chair. Councillor Peter Carey, representing Fairfield and Howley Ward. I confirm I received and read all the papers this afternoon.
Thank you. Councillor Friend.
Yes, good evening, everybody. My name is Councillor Graham Friend. I represent Poulton North, and I have downloaded all the papers onto my laptop and I have them here in front of me, and I've read them. Thank you.
Councillor Morgan. Councillor Morgan, have we got you connected? Just move on and come back to Councillor Morgan. Councillor Mundry.
Hi, good evening. It's Councillor Karen Mundry from Latchford East. I confirmed I've got all the papers in front of me and I've read them. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Parish.
Councillor Steve Parish from Chapelford and Gold Hall. Yes, I've got the papers in a mix of hard copies and digital.
Thank you. Councillor Wheeler.
Good evening, I'm Judith Wheeler, Councillor for Appleton, Hatton, Stretton and Higher Walton, and I'm joining the meeting tonight just by phone, not by laptop.
Okay, Councillor Jennings.
Councillor Jennings, substituting for Councillor Steve Wright, both representing BC and Whitecross. I can confirm that I've received and read the papers.
Thank you. Have we got Councillor Morgan in contact now? I know that he was connecting earlier.
Chair, it's Jenny from Democratic Services here. No, it doesn't look like Councillor Morgan is online for the meeting.
Okay.
Oh.
Sorry, I just got a warning my battery was low.
Councillor Morgan has just connected to the meeting now.
Right. I'll come back to him when he's had a chance to settle. In the meantime, can I ask the officers to introduce themselves? Democratic Services, Jenny.
Hi, Jenny Cordwell from Democratic Services.
Thank you. Legal Services, Paul.
Paul Clisby, solicitor advising the committee this evening.
Thank you. Planning, Nikki.
Thank you, Chair. Nikki Gallagher, Development Manager.
Thank you. Is Mike here from Transport?
Thanks, Chair. Mike Taylor, House Development Control.
Okay. Have we got the Director of Growth here this evening?
No, he sends his apologies, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Right, is Councillor Morgan present now? Have you managed to come in, Liz? Is Councillor Morgan still struggling to connect?
Can you hear that?
Ray, well done.
Yeah.
Can you introduce yourself, Councillor Morgan, and confirm that you've got copies of the reports in front of you?
Councillor Les Morgan, Latchford West. All copies of papers are in front of me. Thank you.
That's right. Thank you very much. Agenda item 1 then. Have we got any apologies, Jenny?
Yes, we do. We have apologies from Councillor Tony McCarthy, Councillor Brian Marr and Councillor Steve Wright.
Thank you. Now we come to declarations of interest. Members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any disclosable pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest which they have in any item of business on the agenda no later than when the item is reached. Have we any declarations from Councillor Barr?
Yes, I know 2 of the objectors to application number 1. I haven't discussed or expressed a view on the application to them, so I feel that I can continue on the committee.
Thank you. Councillor Carey?
Sorry, Chair, I haven't unmuted. No declarations, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Friend?
No declarations, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Morgan?
No declarations.
Thank you. Councillor Mundry?
No declarations.
Councillor Parish?
Yes, Chair, on item 3, I've had previous lots of professional contact with funeral directors and customers of some of the shops nearby as well, including the one next door. So I think I'm going to stand down from number 3. No pecuniary interests, but just feel more comfortable doing that in the circumstances.
Right, thank you. Councillor Wheeler?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Item number 1, I have been involved with one of the households objecting to this application, and I've also put in a few comments of my own, so I won't be taking any part in that item. Item number 2 is in Stretton, which is in my ward. I was aware of the parish council objection, but I haven't discussed this or expressed any interest in it, so I feel happy to take, if that's okay, to take part in discussion on that item.
Okay. Councillor Jennings?
No declaration of interest, Chair.
Right, thank you. Have you any comments, Paul, about those declarations of interest?
No, Chair, only to say that as Councillor Wheeler has indicated, she hasn't formed a view. She's prepared to listen to the arguments. There's no predetermination there, so she's perfectly entitled to continue.
Okay, so Councillor Wheeler's going to be in the discussion of item 2, but not item 1, and Councillor Parish is not going to be part of the meeting for item 3. So you then leave the meeting by muting your mic and turning off your video for the duration of the item. Is that clear to everyone? Okay.
Yep, thank you.
Right.
Yes,
item 3. Item 3, the minutes of the last meeting. Has any member seen a problem with the minutes of the meeting on the 8th of July, which have been circulated to you? Any problems? Okay, I confirm that the minutes of the DMC meeting held on the 8th of July 2020 are a correct record. And we go on to the first planning application. This is application number 2019-35889. It's 179 London Road, Warrington, WA4 5BJ. It's a proposed construction of a new dwelling, alteration to windows of the existing dwelling, and alteration to the existing access. The application is recommended for approval subject to conditions. Can I invite the development manager to present a report?
Thank you, Chair. The application proposes a new detached dwelling within the current grounds of 179 London Road, which is a large individually designed detached dwelling within a residential area. The site is elevated from the highway with views into the site limited to the driveway due to the treed nature of the frontage of the property. The application site shares similar characteristics to its neighbours and those to the rear on Greenway. Those opposite, although detached, are of a different style and orientation, with their back to the highway and in a cul-de-sac. Again, this side of the road is characterised by significant greenery. The application proposes a 6-bed property that would be accessed via the existing driveway to 179. The access would remain largely unchanged, minor amendments. The proposal would respect the front and rear building lines of the existing property, and as shown on page 32 of the paper copy of the report, it would have a lower height than the neighbour. The application proposes amendments to windows within the host dwelling in order to mitigate the impacts on amenity, and these can be secured by condition. There is, within the update note for item 1, there is a suggested condition there which talks about repositioned windows as a point of clarification. Rather than repositioned, we can amend that condition to reflect where additional windows will be placed. So with your agreement, Chair, we can take that outside of committee for further agreement. The application has been called before DMC by Councillor Wheeler in her capacity as a ward councillor. She's objected to development mainly on the basis of residential amenity, with specific regard to number 22 Greenway to the rear of the site. The application was publicised by 23 neighbour notification letters, which resulted in 2 objections detailed within paragraph 4.3 of your report, but summarised as design and character, impact on trees, highway safety, residential amenity and heritage. Reconsultation followed negotiation, and these led to further objections from the same residents on largely the same grounds as detailed within paragraph 4.4 of the report. As members are aware, all planning applications should be determined in accordance with local development plan policies unless other material considerations indicate otherwise. The local plan policies against which the application should be assessed are contained within section 7 of your report for information. The primary issues associated with the development are the principle, the design and character of the area, the impact on trees, residential amenity and highway safety, and I'll look at each of these starting with principle. The application site is located within a primarily residential area and therefore residential uses are accepted in principle subject to detailed plan policies. Members will be aware that currently Warrington is unable to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply as required by the National Planning Policy Framework. This is material in considering the proposal and should be attributed weight, particularly given that it is considered that the application is in a sustainable location. Whilst it is recognised that the site is greenfield, the approval of this would not undermine the Council's wider objective for the majority of new housing to be built on brownfield sites because it relates to just one property. Given that similar residential uses are established in the vicinity, the application would make a contribution to the Council's 5-year housing land supply, albeit small. It is considered acceptable in principle. The application proposes a dwelling of a similar style and character to the host dwelling, which would be within a similar plot size to those properties immediately abutting the site. Comparable heights are demonstrated within the table at paragraph 9.13 of your report, which shows that the property would respect the scale of the existing properties. Materials are unspecified on the plan, but the design and access statement indicates that these would be similar in nature to 179 London Road, and control over this would be secured by condition. Whilst the siting and scale respects the character of the area, it would remain the case that there would be limited views of the application property due to mature vegetation adjacent to the highway. This will be greater in the winter months, however. In any case, it is considered that the proposal would be in keeping with the street scene. The amenity value of the trees fronting the site is recognised, and although these don't have a protected status, conditions are proposed to ensure that their health is safeguarded during the build process. There are other mature trees too within the site that would be removed to facilitate the development. These two are not protected, and the application has been subject to full assessment by the agricultural officer. In terms of design and character in accordance with adopted planning policy, the application is considered to be acceptable. The application has been considered in terms of the impact on the amenity of the adjacent residential properties. In relation to the properties to the rear on Greenway, paragraphs 9.27 to 9.29 of the report discusses the reduction in the ground level where the application property would be sited, the interface distances to those properties to the rear assessed against policy guidance. It is concluded that the distances between habitable rooms are in excess of those usually allowed for by the Council's policies. Any impacts on light would be extremely limited due to the siting and orientation. It is recognised that there would be interfaced issues resulting between primary habitable room windows of the host building and that of the proposed. To mitigate against this, the function of the primary windows will be relocated to an alternative elevation and permitted development rights will be removed to ensure that these are not reinstated, and that relates there to the condition as set out in the update notes to be amended. The access to the site would remain in its current position and the existing driveway would continue along the front of the property to a garage and 3 car parking spaces to the front of the proposed dwelling. It is considered the application would not result in detrimental impacts to highway or pedestrian safety subject to plan policies. Taking into account all material considerations, including those raised by local residents as detailed within your report, it is considered the application adheres to policies within the local plan and is therefore recommended for approval subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I can confirm that we've received written representations from Councillor Wheeler, Mrs Roberts and Mr and Mrs Linus, and all these were against the application. And we've also received written representation from Groves Town Planning in favour of the application. I will now ask members of the committee to confirm that they have read and understood these representations. Councillor Barr?
I have read and understood the representations.
Thank you. Councillor Carey?
Yes, Chair, I confirm also.
Thank you. Councillor Friend?
Yes, Chair, confirm. Thank you.
Yep. Councillor Morgan? Councillor Morgan, are you with us?
Yes, Chair, read and understood.
Thank you. Councillor Mundry?
I confirm.
Thank you. Councillor Parish?
Yes, confirmed, Chair.
That's right. Councillor Jennings?
Read and understood, Chair.
Okay, and I've also read and understood the additional written representations. I confirm these representations will be included in the minutes of this meeting. I will now invite comments and questions to the officers from members in turn, starting again with Councillor Barr. Have you got any comments or questions from the officers, Councillor?
Thank you, Chair. I'm afraid it's the old perennial issue of garden grabbing, which John Groves from Groves Planning acknowledges is an issue in this case and points out that we don't have a policy and that we should be looking at each case on its merits. What I'm concerned about is that this sort of infill development is completely changing the character and the openness of London Road and the transition from the built-up area into the more open area. I'm also concerned in terms of garden grabbing that in the absence of an adequate garden grabbing
Councillor
policy...
Barr, we can hardly...
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Hello?
you come back.
I've come back.
You're fine, Bob.
So I'm on the grounds of garden grabbing.
We've lost you, Bob, I think.
Lost you all sorry?
I think we've
We
lost
seem to
Bob
have lost
altogether.
you altogether, Councillor Barr. Is it just me who can't hear Councillor Barr, or what about others?
No, Chair, I can't hear him either.
I can't hear him either, Chair.
He's currently on mute, Chair.
Pardon?
He's currently muted.
Right, must be trying to get back. So I'll move along and we'll come back to Councillor Barr when hopefully it improves. Councillor Carey, have you got any comments or questions for officers?
Yes, Chair, this is a very large plot, and even with two large houses on it, it's still consistent with the properties that surround it. So I don't have any particular concerns about this one.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Friend, have you got any comments or questions to officers?
No, I would just agree with what Councillor Carey's just said. If you look on the screen now, you can see that there's an obvious gap there, and the houses that back onto it are narrower, if not, and it seems to be that there's space for a house in there. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, that's a good comment. It's there's comments though about the size of the house that are going in and in relation to that plot. But have any, perhaps others have comments to make on that? Councillor Morgan, have you any comments?
I concur with the previous comments, Chair. I think it's pretty much in line with the street scene, and I've nothing really more to say about that one.
Okay. Councillor Mundry, have you any comments or questions for officers?
No, got no comments at this time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Parish?
No, no concerns, especially in light of the appeal on Grantham Avenue recently.
Do you want to expand on that in case anyone else hasn't noticed it?
Yeah, for not sure members will know, but for members of the public, certainly it was a tighter site where the new house was bigger than the original house, and the committee felt it was overdevelopment for that site, but that's been overturned on appeal. So I can't see that we would have much case for refusing this one.
Thank you. Councillor Jennings, have you got any comments or questions?
No comments or concerns, Chair.
Okay. So going back to Councillor Barr, it seems rather critical to hear his points because they were different. Are you with us again,
Yes,
Councillor
I hope
Barr?
so. Can you hear me now?
Yes, start again from the beginning because we hardly heard it.
I will start. I'm afraid I disagree with my colleagues on the committee. I think that one of the things that's unfortunate is the map that's in front of us at the moment shows that there is a space to the south of the next door property, and that yes, infill has occurred to the north of the property, but not to the south of the property. So this is simply confirming the principle that we're going to allow the maximum size of property on garden sites of this sort in the absence of a garden policy. I take on board Councillor Parish's view about the appeal. My view is that these things probably ought to go to appeal because not all the appeals have gone in the same direction. And what I would note about garden grabbing is a one-way process, that once you've built on the green space on the garden, you cannot remove it. You've got that forever. If the policy was to change and to allow this level of infill, then that could change. But I think that we are changing the character of the south end of the town, and I'm concerned about both the impact on the street scene and the impact on the neighbouring properties.
Thank you.
Can I chip in, Chair, if I may?
Let me go through in order that then, because other people may wish to comment as well. Councillor Carey, have you any further questions or comments?
No, Chair. The two properties are using the same access, and I consider there's minimal impact on the street scene. So I'm still happy to go with the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Friend.
I would concur with Councillor Carey. I have nothing else. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Morgan.
Nothing else, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Mundry.
No concerns, Chair.
Okay, Steve. Councillor Parish.
Sorry, it was just to make the point that the committee recently allowed an extension on a very small site in Payne Close, and so I'm not quite sure we should have one rule for people in small houses and one rule for people in big houses.
Sorry, could you clarify that? What was the previous one that you were referring to?
That was Payne Close in Great Sankey.
And you're saying that was an extension that was allowed on a very small site?
Yes.
It filled up the site, didn't it?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's plenty of room for this one here. I'm not sure that whoever built them designed them to eventually have houses next door, but it does look like a house-size gap.
Yes, a comment I would like to make is that we haven't yet had much indication of what the outside surface of this house is going to look like. I noticed that was not in the report, but the officers tell me that the applicant has to produce samples or indications of what it will be like, and the officers will ensure that it will fit in before the building is allowed to reach that stage.
Yeah, I would say it'd be nice to have something less samey, but that's another matter.
Sorry, less?
Samey.
Oh, okay.
Something different.
Right.
Technical term.
Thank you. Councillor Jennings, have you got any further questions or comments?
No, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Barr, can I come back to you? Is there anything else you want to add?
No, I hear what my colleagues have to say. On this occasion, I'm afraid I don't agree with them.
Okay. I think the comments that you've made, although different from the others, are very relevant. I think it's very brave of you to say that things like this should go to appeal, but I will point out that this often costs us quite a lot of money, which we also do need to consider from a practical point of view. Are there any further points of clarification that officers wish to make?
Just one point actually, Councillor Graham, thank you. Councillor Parish referred there to 6 Grantham Avenue and then just explain the background to that for any public that's listening. And just again, for any public that's listening, that is within the appeal decision relating to that is in the agenda packs tonight.
Yes, that's right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from councillors? Okay. I propose the motion that the application is approved. Is anyone prepared to?
I'll second that,
motion?
Chair. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Does anyone wish to make an amendment to the motion? Right. We move to the vote then, if Democratic Service Officers will take over.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Barr?
Against.
Councillor Carey?
For.
Councillor Friend?
For.
Councillor Grime?
Abstain.
Councillor Jennings?
For.
Councillor Morgan?
For.
Councillor Mundry?
For.
Councillor Parish?
For.
Thank you.
Right, thank you.
The application is approved with 6 votes in favour.
Okay, thank you. We come to application number 2. Is Councillor Wheeler back with us?
I am, Chair, thank you.
Good, thank you. This is application number 2019-36269, Walnut Tree Farm, Northwich Road, Stretton, Warrington, WA4 4PG. This is for a change of use, a proposed change of use from parking to B8 storage, part retrospective. The application is recommended for approval subject to conditions. Can I ask the Development Manager to present a report?
Thank you, Chair. The application proposes a change of use of an internal parking area to B8 storage and relates to existing property on the Walnut Tree Business Centre, which consists of a variety of materials as demonstrated in the photographs at the end of your report. The application is part retrospective and external works to facilitate the change of use have already been implemented. The application is being considered by Development Management Committee because of an objection raised by Stretton Parish Council. The reason for the objection is because it does not seek consent for all retrospective works that have been implemented across the site and because it would result in a reduction in the number of car parking spaces. The application was publicised by 2 neighbour notification letters, which resulted in 1 objection detailed within paragraph 4.3 of your report, and this was made on the basis of the principle of the proposal. Members will be aware of the fact that the works have commenced has no bearing on the consideration of the application, which must in any case continue to be assessed against adopted planning policies in the local development plan. All planning applications must be determined in accordance with the development plan policies unless other material considerations indicate otherwise. The local plan policies against which the application should be assessed are contained within section 7 of your report for information. As a point of clarification, there is no requirement for the application to seek consent for all works that have been undertaken, and the Parish Council's concern regarding this have been referred to the enforcement team for further investigation. Now, the application itself does seem to have resulted from previous enforcement action, and there are still options that can be pursued, potentials to be pursued by both the applicants and the enforcement team. You'll note within the update note that's been circulated ahead of committee, we have received a late representation from Stretton Parish Council. Again, that just reiterates some of the concerns regarding the use of the existing building and the retrospective works that have been taken out, and the car parking arrangements, and it's considered these have been addressed in the report. The primary issues associated with development are the principal, visual amenity, residential amenity and highway safety. Core strategy policies seek to assist continued viability and growth of the local economy, which is relevant to this application because it will lead to additional floor space within an established business park. Although this is in the countryside, the designation in itself does not prohibit such small-scale expansion. And furthermore, the site is within Greenbelt and would not lead to additional built form nor displacement of car parking, and would not be considered inappropriate in principle in Greenbelt terms. The external alterations match the character of the host building and would be in keeping with the appearance of the locality, and as such it's considered there's no detrimental impact on the visual amenity of the area as a result. The premises is a reasonable distance away from its closest residential neighbour, 55 metres, and due to this distance and the scale of the development, it's considered that the proposal would not impact on their amenity. In terms of highway safety, and in particular parking numbers, it is the case that the application would result in a reduction in a maximum of 16 spaces, and that the change of use in itself would generate the need for a further 4 spaces. However, the total number of spaces required for the site as a whole is capable of implementation within the current parking layout. In effect, there is currently an over-provision of spaces in accordance with council policy. Subject to a condition to ensure that the conversion will not be used as a separate unit, this is therefore acceptable in highway terms. Taking into account all material consideration, including those raised by local residents as detailed within your report, it is considered that the application adheres to policies contained within the local development plan and is therefore recommended for approval subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I confirm that we received no additional written representations before the deadline yesterday. So the additional things that have come in, members of the committee do not need to necessarily have read them, as I know people are at work today and will possibly not have had time. However, the representation from Stretton Parish Council did come in, and I asked Nikki to comment on that, which she did during her presentation, and thank you very much for that. Is there anything that you could say to expand, Nikki, on the problems that Stretton Parish Council have with the fact that the parking is already crowded and there's going to be the loss of the 16 spaces, and also that so much is also still under enforcement, and it doesn't seem to be at all clear how this is going to fit in with the current application. Is there anything further you can clarify for us?
I mean, at this stage, there are various options that would be available to the applicants. As councillors will be aware, no weight can be given to the fact that this work has already been continued. It has already been commenced, and we need to consider it against policy terms in any event, as we would if it hadn't been implemented. And the same principle can be applied to any other works that are currently under investigation. So if the option was pursued to submit another application to regularise those, they would be assessed against exactly the same policies that are in place here, and the approval or otherwise of this application would not then prejudice the outcome of a future application. It comes back to those principles again of each on its merit. So you wouldn't be forming an opinion which then will be carried over to a future application. The other matters as well is that, of course, we don't know whether that would be their intention, the applicant's intention, and it may be that if works have been carried out without planning permission that required planning permission, that they would revert back to their previous use, and therefore an application wouldn't in any case be necessary.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Right, so we'll go on to comments and questions from members to officers. Councillor Carey, would you like to start off?
Yes, Chair. A little bit uneasy about the other issues that are not really part of this report, that are in the background. I did take a lot of comfort from the statement from Nikki stating that there was more than adequate car parking and that this wouldn't prejudice the car parking. So I'm sort of a little bit, as I say, uncertain about that side of it. One other question that I meant to ask was the storage that we're being asked to approve. Do we know what is going to be stored in there? I don't know this business, so I don't know what the nature is of their products and so on.
No, I don't, Councillor Carey. I'm afraid I don't have that information.
Right, okay.
Right, thank you. Councillor Friend, have you got any comments or questions for officers?
None at this time, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Morgan, have you got any comments or questions?
I'm just a little bit concerned, like Councillor Carey said, about the what the business is and what the intent is to store materials in there. Leaves me scratching my head a little.
Right, thank you. Councillor Mundry, have you got any comments or questions?
No, I've got no comments or questions at this time, Chair.
Okay,
Thank you.
Councillor Parish.
Chair, I noticed this is a 2019 application. Presumably it's only coming to us during the coronavirus situation because the parish council objection came in before we changed the rule that parish council objections won't mean it comes to committee. So I'd just like to know why it has taken so long, because obviously we're well past the date for determination, and I'm content that the other matters need to be dealt with separately from this application.
Have you any comments, Nikki?
Yeah, so just on the issues there raised by Councillor Parish there, about why we're just seeing it now, it's a 2009 application. My understanding is that we were looking for further clarification on the levels of car parking and trying to understand the enforcement implications for this application. We've negotiated an extension of time, so you can see there the extension of time we had until the 10th of July to determine this application. So so within a statutory expiry, so normally we'd look to determine an application in 8 weeks, but in this particular case we had an agreement until the 10th of July. Obviously now with that time frame has passed, but marginally. We're still in a position where we can issue the decision on this. The other issue was around the parish council, and the parish council, so the parish council has objected. This isn't the delegations related to householder applications. This isn't a householder application, which is why it's before you now. Okay. And Councillor Graham, if you wouldn't mind, if I could just pick up one with the other points there made by Councillor Carey and Councillor Morgan, which I think would be useful if I could provide a little bit more clarity on. Apologies, I've not done that sooner. And that is in relation to the storage, the nature of the storage. And I think it's probably just important to clarify that it is ancillary to the office use, the associated use. Sorry, the associated use of this. It isn't a separate unit. So it's just a continuation of that. We are not under the impression that it would be anything other than you would normally find within business areas. Certain products you would more akin to industrial areas. That isn't the case in here. There's been we've got no notification of any hazardous installation or hazardous storage or anything like that.
Thank you. Councillor Wheeler, have you got any comments or questions for officers?
Thank you, Chair. I think concerns along with Councillor Carey and Councillor Morgan. This is a business park. It's not an industrial park. And once you grant B8 use, B8 use exists, and you can further develop a B8 use site. And that's what concerns me. That's my main concern. You know, you're moving from a business park to something else, and we don't know what that something else is. The other concern is the displacement of parking onto it's not really highway, is it? It's onto sort of anywhere you can park on the site, and that's a concern because this site exits onto a very, very busy stretch of the A559, which is very difficult to access. And I do have concerns about the displaced parking, which I believe is existing already. So thank you, Chair.
Okay. Nikki, could you clarify what sort of things can be under B8 use?
So B8 is just general storage and distribution. As a point of clarity, apologies, Chair, if we look on the table on within section 6 relevant site history, we'll see 2009 there. It was a proposed extension to the site to an existing document store. So once it's got B8, obviously, as one of the councillors pointed out there, it is subject to change, but at that time it was a document store. Mm-hmm. So going back to the other point, which is what could be stored and distributed, well, it's a variety of things. Obviously, you see along the M62 corridor, larger scale storage and distribution centres. There would be no suggestion that anything along those lines could take place at this location because it's a constrained site, so it's limited by the site.
Okay,
Chair, can I chip in again, Steve Parrish? Just condition 2 does restrict it to the building that's the business operating from the cowshed, and this building is going to be part of that. Presumably that, I don't know which business is in the cowshed, but presumably the condition means that the consent runs with the land, so this can't be used separately, sold off separately. It is part of the whatever business is in the cowshed, effectively.
Thank you. Councillor Jennings, have you got any comments or questions for officers?
No comments or concerns, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barr, have you got any comments or questions?
Yes, I'm grateful to Nikki for explaining that we have to look at this just as though it was a plain, straightforward application coming forward for this sort of extension and ignore the fact that it's retrospective. I do feel uncomfortable about that because I feel that when we grant the East Planning permissions, effectively we're condoning a use that was not permitted, and the applicant can avoid further enforcement action, because obviously not expedient to enforce if we later give planning permission. But we are getting quite a number of cases of buildings starting or development starting without planning permission on the assumption that we will allow retrospective planning permission. But I accept Nikki's advice that there's very little we can do about that if the principle of development is sound, and I am happy that the principle of this development is sound.
Okay. Are there do any other councillors want to make additional comments? Can I ask? Could I perhaps ask Mike Taylor if you've got any comments to make about the parking? I mean, we've heard on the one hand that the parking is sufficient for the official guidelines for this sort of site, but the kind of site seems to be what it is in a state of flux. We don't know what's happening later, and we've also had comments that sort of hint that the parking is actually already full and another 16 places are to be found that might be going all over the place. Have you got any comments to make for us, Mike?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just to clarify a couple of the issues. Obviously, the application itself involves the loss of around 15 spaces, and then the creation of the B8 warehouse unit, the extension, generates the demand for 4 additional spaces. But if you look at the plan on the screen at the moment, the red line is obviously the extension, which makes the whole warehouse and office unit a little bit bigger. And within the blue line, within the land within their control, they control, there is provision for 32 spaces. Now, the overall operation, according to our standards, requires 30 spaces. So they're in excess of our standards. And in addition, if you look to the plan to the northwest corner, it's not very clear, but there's an overflow parking area there, which I understand is for general use by all of the units to cater for any additional visitors or overflow. And as one of the councillors pointed out, the site itself, it may be untidy, but there is sufficient space within the overall site to allow for additional overflow parking before there be any impact on the operation of the highway and before there be impact on the operation of the service and access within the site itself. So we've got no objections to it, Chair.
Right, thank you. Do any other councillors wish to comment?
Chair, Councillor
Yes.
Wheeler.
Yeah.
It's a question for Mike, really. Obviously, this is because it's a business park, it's a fairly private site, so you don't really see it unless you're going on there. Is there any way we can ask the applicant to control the parking so it doesn't become hazardous on the site, or is there nothing we can do for that?
I mean, there have been cases where we've asked for parking management plans, but we've not foreseen the need for it in this instance, because like I say, everything, we would normally only insist on that if there's likely to be an impact on the highway, and we don't feel like that's ever going to be an issue here. I mean, in respect to control, condition 3 on page 42 of the paper copy report reflects the site arrangements, which is laid out on page 43, and that's a change to the existing layout. So, you know, there is some control in ensuring we get a layout that works and is appropriate for the site.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Any other councillors want to come back on that or any other points?
Yeah, just for clarity, Chair, page 42 and 43 of the paper report are pages 50 and 51 of the copies that the general public have. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. We are working on this. Anything else? Do any officers want to make any points of clarification?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Right, I propose the motion that the application is approved. Is anyone prepared to second that?
I'll second, Chair.
Councillor Friend, Chair.
Yep. You're seconding it, Councillor Friend?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay. Are there any amendments to the motion? Okay, the motion is proposed and seconded. Can I hand over to Democratic Services to take the vote?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Barr? Sorry, Councillor Barr?
For.
Thank
I'm
you.
for the motion.
Councillor Carey?
For.
Oh, thank you. Councillor, thank you. Councillor Friend?
For.
Councillor Grime?
For.
Councillor Grime?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Jennings?
For.
Councillor Morgan?
Approve. For.
Thank you. Councillor Mundry?
For.
Councillor Parrish?
For.
And Councillor Wheeler?
Abstain.
Thank you. The application is approved.
Right, thank you. We come to application 3. That's 2020-36627. 17 Honiton Way, Penketh, Warrington, WA5 2EY. This is for full planning, proposed use of a former retail premises as a funeral director and mortuary. The application is recommended for approval subject to conditions. Can I invite the Development Manager to present a report?
Thank you, Chair. As you've just stated there, the application is for a change of use from former retail unit to a funeral directors with ancillary mortuary. The application site is within an existing parade in the Penketh area of Warrington and Penketh Square neighbourhood centre. It's defined neighbourhood centre as identified in the local plan core strategy, and it's a pedestrianised zone with a car park towards the front. The application proposes, as we just said, they're a change of use from retail to a funeral directors and mortuary within a sui generis category, so no defined use class as such. That's important for reasons that we'll come on to when we look at the principle. The application is before members tonight because of a call-in by the ward councillor, Councillor Daria. She's raised concerns regarding the request and request for it to be considered by DMC, because she considers it an inappropriate location for such a facility. It doesn't have the quiet dignity that's needed to service the bereaved. It's between a butcher's and a takeaway. The access to the rear of the site is a servicing area. There's a lack of privacy, and there's concern about the interface between the HGV deliveries to the Spar supermarket and those servicing the funeral parlour. Members will be aware that all applications, I'll just go before that, we advertised the application by 13 neighbourhood notification letters, and 2 objections were received from third parties, and these were mainly on the issues of parking, and the negative is business impact. So vitality, viability of the centre, you might describe that as, and it's about the negative impacts on the adjacent food establishments. Members will be aware that all applications should be considered and determined in accordance with local development plan policies unless other material considerations indicate otherwise, and these are detailed within section 7 of your report. The main issues to consider are the principles of development, residential amenity and highway safety, and I'll look at these in turn. So in terms of the neighbourhood centre, similar types of uses can be seen elsewhere within the parade in terms of retail and professional services. There are retail units, there's a takeaway, I believe there's a restaurant, post office, spa, bank, and as well as leisure uses such as the yoga centre. So the whole mixture is within there, and policies contained within the core strategy state that retail and leisure uses will be directed towards district, neighbourhood and local centres where the development is of a scale and nature appropriate to that area served by the centre, and proposals will be expected to enhance the vitality, viability and overall attractiveness of the centre. So in this particular instance, it is considered that the funeral directors is akin to those professional services that you would normally expect to find within a neighbourhood centre. It's interesting that funeral directors in isolation is more often considered as an A1 retail use in its own right, but there has been instances where, usually depending on scale, it has been considered a sui generis use, and there's inspectors' decisions which confirms that position, and therefore the applicant has chosen to submit the application on that basis, and we have assessed it as such. But equally, it's worth bearing in mind that there are examples where a funeral directors with small-scale ancillary mortuary facilities would be within an A1 use, and therefore, in this particular instance, wouldn't have required permission. In terms of the impact on residential amenity, the general comings and goings from this site are expected to be relatively low. They'll be mainly from the front in terms of customers accessing from the front through the pedestrianised area, as you would expect from the other shops. A consideration for this type of use is also in terms of its visual impact, where people can see this type of use. Would it cause them distress? So would there be any undue distress as a result of this use in this location that might affect residential properties? And in this particular case, because it is sited within the neighbourhood parade, it is considered that it wouldn't be the case. There would be no significant harm in terms of general disturbance or undue stress on residents as a result. In terms of highway safety, this purpose-built neighbourhood centre, which is allocated car parking associated with it, and it is not considered that this use would place any undue stress above current levels on those parking requirements. The funeral directors, in terms of their fleet, would not be stored within this site at all. Their fleet of vehicles would be stored elsewhere, but when they need to visit the premises, it would be servicing from the rear. In conclusion then, the application is considered to accord with policies within the local development plan and is therefore recommended for approval subject to conditions as set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I can confirm that we've received a written representation from Tracy McSorley, who is the applicant. I will now ask members of the committee to confirm that they have read and understood this representation. Councillor Barr. Councillor Barr.
Yes, just one.
Yeah, I heard a yes. Councillor Carey.
Yes, Chair, read and understood.
Councillor Friend.
Yes, Chair, read and understood.
Councillor Morgan.
Read and understood, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mundry.
Read and understood, Chair.
Councillor Wheeler.
Yes, Chair, read and understood.
Councillor Jennings.
Read and understood, Chair.
And I've also read and understood the representation. I confirm this representation will be included in the minutes of this meeting. I will now invite comments and questions from members to officers in turn. Councillor Friend. Have you got any comments?
Up there. No questions at this time, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Morgan.
Nothing at this moment, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Mundry.
No questions at this moment.
Okay. Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Chair. In Stockton Heath, on the eastern side of the road, there are 3 undertakers in a parade of mixture of takeaways, chemists, bakers, butchers. It just adds to the vibrancy of the village. I don't think anybody has ever expressed any concerns. And I know the co-op funeral directors have a dog bowl outside for dogs to drink water. So that's how much part of the community it is. I think it's an essential service. I think it would bring benefit to the shops on Oniton Square. And I really fail to see why this is an issue. I really do struggle with this one. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Jennings, have you got any comments or questions for officers?
Only to echo everything that Councillor Williams just said.
All right, thank you. Councillor Barr?
I agree with Councillor Wheeler too.
Okay. Councillor Carey?
Yes, Chair, I'm quite happy with this. I think most funeral directors I have come across have been operated very discreetly and have not caused any problems for neighbours. And I think neighbourhood centres like this one, they need as much variety as they can get because retailers are generally struggling. So to find another use that will fit into the parade is something to be supported.
Right, thank you. Do any councillors wish to make any further comments?
Chair, Councillor Wheeler, just as an aside, I mean, if you want an inappropriate location for funeral directors, it's the one on Lovely Lane opposite the hospital. That could be a very convenient location or a very inappropriate one, depending on how you feel at the time.
Oh dear. Do any officers want to make any points of clarification?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, right. I propose the motion that the application is approved. Councillor Morgan, would you like to second that?
I will indeed second that, Chair.
Right, thank you. Are there any amendments to the motion? Okay, can I hand over to the Democratic Services Officer to take the vote?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Barr?
4.
Councillor Carey?
4.
Councillor Friend?
4.
Councillor Grime?
4.
Councillor Jennings?
4.
Councillor Morgan?
4.
Councillor Mundry?
4.
Councillor Wheeler?
4.
Thank you. The application is approved.
Thank you very much. Right, that's the end of the applications. We now come to item 5 on the agenda, the appeals decisions summary. The report is attached to the agenda starting on page 9. 4 appeals have been decided since our last meeting and 2 submitted.
Chair?
Yes?
Yeah, that's for the members of the public. That's their page number 67.
Thank you very much. Does the development manager wish to make any additional comments on the report on the appeal decisions?
Just in terms of, there's a couple of applications there, there's a couple of appeal decisions there that relate to costs, and I know that that's something that members have raised interest in previously. I do have cost reports here. In future they will be included within the agenda packs, but I'm happy to circulate those separately if members want to see them.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from members, in particular relating to the development manager's last comment? Councillor Morgan?
I welcome what Nicky's just said about the costs.
Okay. Councillor Mundry?
I welcome them as well.
Thank you. Councillor Parish?
I'm fine with that, Chair.
Councillor Wheeler?
No, fine with it, Chair, and I still continue to think these are very useful.
Right, Councillor Jennings?
Yeah, likewise, fine.
Right, Councillor Barr? Councillor Barr, are you with us?
He's on mute, Chair.
I will be with you as soon as. Oh.
Councillor Barr, have you any comments?
Yep.
You've muted your microphone. You're muted.
We can see you, Bob.
Put your thumb up.
Thought you'd have got used to it by now.
Your microphone is muted.
This is the beginning when we started.
I think he knows his microphone is muted.
I'll come back to him in a minute.
It does say that he's alive.
Councillor Carey, have you got any comments or questions?
No comments, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Friend.
No comments. Welcome the what Nicky said. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Barr, are you with us now?
Yes, I'm back. Unmuted now, I hope. For some reason, my unmute function hasn't been working properly, so I've been trying to unmute and wouldn't let me. Yes, I follow what colleagues say, that cost reports will be very helpful.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further comments from councillors? Any points of clarification from officers?
No, thank you, Chair.
Right, I propose that the appeal summary report is accepted. Councillor Mundry, would you like to second that?
I'll second that, Chair.
Right, thank you very much. Democratic Services, would you take the vote for us, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Barr?
4.
Councillor Carey?
4.
Councillor Friend?
Sounds like a game of golf. 4.
Councillor Graham?
4.
Councillor Jennings?
4.
Councillor Morgan?
4.
Councillor Mundry?
4.
Councillor Parish?
4.
And Councillor Wheeler?
4.
Thank you. The report will be noted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that's the end of the meeting. And I declare the meeting closed. Thank you everyone for your attendance and hard work.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair.